I've worked a lot with bars and kids and bars and parents and kids. I've not worked so much directly with schools. And I have a lot of stories about kids who've had their bars run and the changes that occurred in their behaviors and their really in their abilities to function in school and to manage all the craziness that goes on in school. And so years ago, I had a practice where I saw kids and families a lot, like 30 or 40 kids and families a week. And I used to do bars classes for parents, and sometimes kids would come, not always. And the anecdotal evidence, the stories that I heard from principals, from teachers, from parents were just amazing. Like kids who really were not able to function in school couldn't withstand any degree of stimulation. It would send them off into orbit, and they'd be sent down to the principal's office, and they kept on getting pink slips or blue slips or whatever color slips the school happened to give them, but they were the bad kid slips, you know, and the kids were getting marked with these labels, both diagnostic and then just sort of in the vernacular, oh, it's a really difficult kid, or oh my God, you really don't want him in your class, you know, like that kind of stuff. And then all the really fancy medical diagnoses. And what I found in my practice and what parents found with their kids is that all of that dissipated. Like the kids who hadn't been able to handle being in school were able to handle being in school. They had play dates. They were able to get their homework done. They went to bed at night. Bedtimes weren't difficult. Morning routines were a lot easier. And it's not like there's sort of this energy of bars. It's something that you have to learn, and it's a cap and gown kind of thing, and you have to get it right. And if you get it wrong, it's not going to work. It's not like that at all. It really isn't like that at all. Kids are really adaptable, and really all bars does, which is a big all, is it works on bars work on kids a lot quicker, but it taps them back into that sense of space and peace and ease that exists in all of us, that with kids who are misunderstood, mislabeled, misdiagnosed, and mistreated in schools tend to either act out this way or internalize and become depressed and suicidal and like that kind of stuff. What it does is it releases all of that, and it allows them to function. I can't tell you how many parents have called me and said, oh my God, my little guy got up this morning and I knew he was headed straight for the principal's office. And I asked him if I could do that thing on his head. That's what they call it. They don't even call it the bars. Can I do that thing on your head? And he said yes. And his dad said, and I didn't get a call all day long. And the teacher called me at the end of the day and said, oh my God, he had a great day, right? Like story after story after story like that.
I have a private client with a kid, and I was apparently supposed to be teaching him how to read. And he was autistic and always in trouble, just like Anne said, sitting outside the classroom. He was dragged to the principal's office all the time. His parents had just had it up to like the neck with him, did not know what to do. He can't read. His reading age was like 3 or 4 and he was 8 years old. So they sent him to me, and he was so autistic. For the first session, we didn't even touch. I literally was just with him. No questions. He did not want to speak to anyone. He was just so resistant to anyone even contributing to him because he was always in trouble. And after a few sessions, he let me run his bars really gently, just slightly off the head. And within that week, his reading age went from that grade 3 to like his reading age, like he caught up the 4 years of reading. And he got Student of the Year award in assembly and became like the best student in class. One bar session. So it had nothing to do with his reading at all. And in my interesting point of view, I get the bars just allowed him to actually stop perceiving as many of those thoughts, feelings, and emotions that weren't really his. And rather than resisting the system, actually being in the system and enjoying and thriving.
When I first started using Access in the classroom, I didn't use bars. The only thing I knew about Access was Dane's book, Being You. After reading the book, I decided when I was teaching in the classroom, what I did was I changed out all my classroom management and all the Common Core lingo, those of you who are in America, and I put Access consciousness tools up. So on the door in red font, I put, how does it get better than this? So every time they came in and out of the room, they seen that. When I would do my higher order questioning, I would say, how does it get easier than this? What else is possible? And by doing that, a lot of things started to dissolve in the classroom, including bullying, because I also taught them interesting point of view. Everything is the opposite of what appears to be. In public schools, I taught them what POD and POC was had a horse tied to a chair and told them that was the point of creation, point of destruction at the same time, so that they were able to understand that when they were little, they were not allowed to talk to strangers, and how that would be a point of destruction when they're older because they need to talk to strangers when they're in school. And after, like I said, after I found the book and it helped me out personally, and this was a poverty school. It's a Title I, which means it was the poverty ratio is pretty high. They were also a failing school, and these children were in 7th and 8th grade, but they were operating on a 1st and 2nd grade math level. So as I would go through the lessons, I would POD and POC. I'd say, okay, let's POD and POC it with anything, all their limitations that they had. One of the biggest gifts that I found from it, and like I said, I didn't go in there with the intention of, I'm going to be a facilitator. I just went in there using the tools and changed out my classroom management practices with it. Was I had a clearing loop on money as a limitation, clearing out the money, and I was playing it on mute for me. I wasn't playing it for the kids. And being in a poverty school, learned helplessness creates poverty. So it was actually dissolving a lot of their limitations at the core without even me realizing it. Like I said, it was accidental. And this particular person is she's into unicorns a lot. And suddenly these kids started showing me unicorn shirts and where they were downloading it. So like in Dane's book, he talks about the 100 monkeys. I was visually watching this happen in the classroom. It was like, whoa. And if I had it to do over again, going back into that same situation, a lot of the suggested tools like touching their implant band when they would POD and POC certain things. The interesting point of view tool really works well, especially with the bullying. When the test scores came back, these kids' averages beat the state. And these are kids that were operating on this math level for almost 5-6 years. And they jumped 5-6 years in less than 3 months. So that's just the tools of Access. So you can imagine if you were able to add bars into that, or the simple little tricks like some of the other presenters had mentioned today, it could go through the roof. And I would like to be an invitation to let all the other teachers, especially in America, your classroom management, change out Bloom's taxonomy with Access tools and see what happens.
Running bars on autistic kids, my experience is that the learning curve is like they learn super fast without the contraction and expectation of is that correct? Is this the way I should be learning? They just learn, and they can have academic improvement. That is what they're expected to be, and to have, and to obtain after an English lesson or a bar session. But more of that. I had one autistic kid jumping the fence, and he was muttering, "Oh, so I am the valuable product," and it was like, "Right, yes, you are." And it's just they go away with a different perception of what they know, and that they can trust that.
Because I gave one, it was only one bar class and Being You class for, it was like teenagers in a detention place, it was only one. It's and it was amazing because I don't have kids, I don't have nephew, even though I love kids, but I'm not used to. And teenagers, and all of those then were boys. It was very, and I said, oh my God, because the lady all the time I said, the kids. Then I saw guys that were taller than me. I said, but you know, what I did was lower my barriers and started using the bingo tools. Then the day after, I gave bars class, and they were so involved with this the day, you know, with all the practice. I have the pictures, and usually what's very interesting, because those guys, they don't have the habit of touching each other. You know, they don't touch because they're like boys, 15 years old, so they're always, you know, and they were touching each other. And there was something that I used always share in my classes, in the foundation class. I invite people to run bars as Matteo, that would be Mateus, Matteo in Italiano. And because this boy, he was running bars, but all of a sudden he put his hand in my head, and I was with my watch controlling the time, and I disconnected, you know, completely. I never had bars run that way, like 3 minutes, you know. And the importance to, you know, no expectation, because I didn't have expectation about him. He didn't have any expectation how would be running bars. All they wanted to be is, you know, having a good day, learning something, and also having the leaving this place with a certificate and be able to have a professional thing after leaving the detention place. So that day was just amazing. In fact, only one boy, that it was 9 boys, only one left the place, okay? And I'm trying to have an interview with him, like a Zoom interview, because he tried to kill himself. And he tried to kill himself before the class. And he put fire in the jail. Then the psychologist of this detention was a practitioner, and she ran his bars for 30 minutes, and the second week, 1 hour session. And then the third week he came and says, "What did you do with me? You didn't tell me anything. You just put your hands in my head, and I am another person. I don't want to kill people anymore. I have love in my heart. What did you do?" And then she says, "Okay, this is who you really are. The other one is not you." Then, so everything started, and then I was able to give bars class in this detention place.
So I worked with a grade 11 girl who was in her final year at school and a high achiever. So she was one of these that had so much pressure on her to get straight A's. She had huge targets. Like, she wants to go into politics. She wants to take over the world. She's somebody with lots and lots and lots of drive. And yet in her world, there was a sense of depression, and she wasn't good enough. And anything she did was never going to actually create the life she knew was possible. So in my very, very first session with her, she spoke about a friend of hers who had depression and was considering suicide. So it really opened up this space of these high achievers have so much pressure put on them that this idea of suicide was really relevant and actually something they talked about, and it's really real, depression and suicide. And yet here we are sitting in front of a girl who's a high achiever, like totally a contribution to her peers, to the world. You can see where she's going to be in 10 years' time. And I knew she was talking about herself. She was actually sitting there considering, do I just leave because I'm not enough? I ran her bars, and the following week, she'd created a documentary about depression with teens. Her video got nominated for an award in Australia, and she ended up winning Student of the Year in Australia, not just Queensland, her state, but she actually got an award for being Student of the Year. That was after about 6 months of running her bars every single week. And the phenomenal results she had at your school, she got like straight A's. She's gone on to the best university. She was even invited to New York to go and work with some really great leaders. So this girl literally was a thriver, and she was on the brink of just surviving. And the space that the bars created was it just allowed her to actually step into that potency, to step into who she actually is, and allowed her to just become this leader with ease, rather than the force and the pressure and the expectations from school and her peers and her parents. So that was, yeah, I can just see her going, oh, thank you.